Hey y'all. Welcome back to the channel. We're going to pick back up on the history of the tobacco leaf. I'm reading out of this book right here. Smoking by Sherry Sonnet. We started talking about the history of the leaf here in the Americas and the Mayan Indians and the Native Americans who started the tradition of smoking pipe tobacco and tobacco in general. And we left off where we're about to start talking about the arrival of the Europeans and the Spanish. So let's start there. When Christopher Columbus sighted land on October 12, 1492, he was expecting to find the gold and riches of the East Indies in the Orient. Instead, he and his crew found people unlike any Europeans had ever seen before, people with strange customs and costumes. Because they still thought they were in the East Indies, the Spaniards called these people Indians. Columbus and his men did not find the gold they were looking for on the first islands they explored in the Caribbean, although gold would soon be discovered in other parts of the New World. But they found something else that was to become almost as valuable. In his journal on October 15, 1492, Columbus wrote, "We met a man in a canoe going from Santa Maria to Fernandina. He had with him a piece of bread which the natives make as big as one's fist, a calabash of water, and some dried leaves which are in high value among them, for a quantity of it was brought to me at San Salvador." A few days later, a landing party Columbus had sent ashore returned to report that the natives drank the smoke of these curious dried leaves. This was astonishing to the Europeans, who had never seen anything like smoking before. For a long time they were puzzled and disgusted by this strange habit. They had no way of knowing that they soon too would be drinking smoke from those leaves, and spreading the plant and the habit of smoking it all over the known world. So they were put off by it at first. Drinking the smoke. So I'm smoking a Missouri Meerschaum Morgan. Inside, some C&D Bijou. Terrific Oriental Virginia. By the early 1500s, Bishop Las Casas, one of the first Europeans to write about the New World, wrote, "I knew Spaniards on this island of Hispaniola, Santo Domingo, who were accustomed to take tobacco, and being reprimanded for it, by telling them it was a vice, they replied that they were unable to cease using it." From this and other writings of the period, it seems clear that the first non-Indian smokers were common sailors and soldiers. They sampled tobacco, got hooked, and refused to give it up even though their officers and the clergy thought it was wrong. In fact, they began smoking in such large numbers that by 1535, the Spaniards decided to cultivate the plant. They established their first tobacco plantation on Santo Domingo so that they wouldn't have to rely on the tobacco that was growing wild. They soon had other plantations in Trinidad and Cuba, in Mexico, and parts of South America. By 1575, they even had plantations in the Philippine Islands in the Pacific and had a complete monopoly of the world's tobacco trade. The Spaniards. So they liked it so much that they decided to start growing it themselves. So check this out. This is a 16th century engraving that shows tobacco being grown in an American Indian village, Sakota, North Carolina. The fields marked E in the upper left, center, and lower left side are tobacco. Check that out. Up here is tobacco. So this is a 16th century engraving. That's awesome insight. into an Indian village. The Spaniards' closest rivals in tobacco use and trade were the Portuguese, who, according to early records, began to smoke in Brazil around 1555. The Portuguese were excellent sailors and explorers, and they soon had trading posts down the west coast of Africa, the Indian Peninsula, the Malay Islands, and even China and Japan. Wherever they went, they carried tobacco with them and introduced it to the different people they met. These people also quickly took to tobacco, and in this way the smoking habit spread across the world. The rest of Europe followed. During this time, other European countries were discovering tobacco and learning to smoke it. The Dutch, French, and English were all experimenting with growing tobacco in their colonies in the New World. But the tobacco grown in these colonies was not nearly as good as the tobacco grown by the Spanish. So other Europeans continued to buy from the Spanish the tobacco they actually smoked. From the time Europeans discovered tobacco, they had brought back samples of the plant itself to their home countries. Many private and royal gardens in Spain and Portugal grew various types of the plant. In 1559, Jean Nicot, the French ambassador to Portugal, sent some cuttings of the plant to his friends in France. It is from Nicot that tobacco gets its botanical name, Nicotiana. When Nicot returned to France, he convinced the Queen, Catherine de Medici, to use tobacco as a medicine in the form of snuff. He claimed he had cured ringworm, ulcers, and cancer, as well as the wound of his cook, who had cut off almost all of his thumb with a great kitchen knife. The Queen was impressed, and the use of snuff became popular throughout the French court. For centuries, taking snuff remained the only way for a person of quality to take tobacco. Ordinary people could smoke pipes or cigarettes. Aristocrats took snuff. Boy, they really thought tobacco could cure a lot of ills. That was disproved, later on, but I think for a while they really thought it was a medicine. It is thought that smoking became popular in England when students who had learned the habit at the University of Leiden in Holland brought it home. For young English dandies, smoking became a high art. They even hired professors to teach them the proper way to fill a pipe, roll a cigarette, or even blow smoke rings. But you didn't have to be a dandy to smoke. Soon people from every level of society and all occupations were doing it. The English didn't like having to buy tobacco from the Spanish. For years, their colony in Virginia tried to grow a tobacco as good as the Spanish variety. They had no luck until, perhaps through the efforts of a friendly sea captain, the Virginians managed to get their hands on some Spanish tobacco seeds. By 1617, there was a tobacco boom in Virginia, with every available bit of land being used to grow it, even the streets. It was the end of the Spanish monopoly and the beginning of the most important cash crop the English colonies had. Tobacco was so important in these colonies that it was for a time legal tender. This meant it could be used as money to pay taxes, debts, and even ministers' salaries. Now that's interesting. It was so important and such a big part of the economy that they used it for money for a time. I feel like us here in America, we have a long and deep history with tobacco. It had a big impact on our economy from an early stage. From the very beginning, some people, such as the clergy, were against the use of tobacco, but there was another group which approved of it, the medical profession. Doctors and scientists all over Europe, and especially in France, were convinced that tobacco was the magic drug they were looking for. They claimed tobacco in all its forms, the smoke, the dried leaves, the liquid that could be extracted from it, could cure almost anything. Their list included colds, fevers, blisters and blemishes, coughs, even broken limbs. During the Great Plague epidemic in England in 1664 to 66, doctors advised school children at Eton to smoke a pipe each morning to keep from catching the plague. This belief in tobacco as a medicine outweighed any objections church or state officials had, but most ordinary people didn't care either way. They used tobacco simply because they wanted to, and by the end of the 1700s, most of the medical claims for tobacco were proven false. By the beginning of the 20th century, tobacco had spread to every corner of the world. The English might prefer a pipe, the French snuff, or the Turks and Russians cigarettes, but all of them had been conquered by the least likely of things, a simple vegetable product. Well, I felt like that was a very interesting insight into the history of our beloved leaf. I love my pipe. I love pipe smoking. And as long as I'm doing it in this capacity, I love tobacco. I think it's a very interesting subject, and especially when you get down into the history of it with our country and how it's intertwined. I love reading about it. Well, I really appreciate y'all checking out this presentation and stopping by to hang out with me. Please drop a comment. Share what you know about the history of tobacco and anything that you might like to add. I'll be glad to know what y'all got to say. Like this content if you dig it. Subscribe to the channel. I'll see y'all next time for a nice, quiet pipe in the woods.